Joining me today is New Hampshire Executive Councilor Colin Van Ostern. And Colin, we're talking about the budget. One of the issues that you wrote about was Medicaid expansion.
Yes.
And I know the Finance Committee has said, look, in the long run, it's not affordable for New Hampshire. And I think from my looking in is that you would actually disagree with that.
Oh, yeah.
Am I right in that?
I think it's, we can't afford not to do it, frankly. What we've seen, so we started about 6 months ago, 9 months ago, New Hampshire passed a bipartisan law called the New Hampshire Health Protection Plan. It basically let folks who are near the poverty line get care through Medicaid, preventative health care in most cases.
And these were people that didn't qualify for...
They were kind of falling through the cracks
Medicaid.
Otherwise, so they weren't getting Medicaid as it was. And the reality is that just in the past year, the number of uninsured patients who've showed up at ERs in New Hampshire has fallen by 17%. So this isn't just about making sure that those 38,000 people who have signed up for Medicaid since it was passed last year are getting good care. Now, that's important. They're people in our communities, our friends, our neighbors, our employees, our bosses. But it's also because all of us bear the benefit of it. You know, when less people show up in an ER without any insurance, it means there aren't those costs won't be passed on to everyone else. I would much rather have those costs be paid by my federal tax dollars, which I've already paid in the first place, than have New Hampshire opt out, kick close to 50,000 people off their health care coverage. And then when they show up to the ER and something's wrong, it's not like it doesn't cost anything. The difference is that the cost will end up on my shoulders and your shoulders and all your viewers' shoulders.
So the cost exists, and it's going to be picked up somewhere.
Yeah, people are still going to break their legs. They're still going to get sick. The truth is that things like Medicaid expansion can help a little bit with that because it gives people an opportunity to get preventative care. And sometimes that old adage is true. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
But I mean, I guess the other thing is people who have insurance plans.
Yeah.
There's a cost shift that's happening.
That's right.
And those costs, the hospitals shift it to those people who are paying.
Yeah, it gets spread around. Sometimes the hospitals take some of that and they pay for it themselves. Yep. They're often nonprofits.
They're nonprofits.
But sometimes they pass it on to other patients, or the insurance companies do. I mean, indirectly, a lot of us pay when folks show up and need to get care. And often, if they haven't had any insurance, they show up when it's too late to get the cheap care, when they, only the kind of the most expensive, most difficult care is going to happen. And obviously, in this country, we don't turn people away when they're in a dire situation like that. But the reality is that a lot of us have been paying for it. And a better way is to be smart and be preventative, like the New Hampshire Health Protection Plan, which, by the way, passed with support from members of both parties.
Do you think that this is an economic issue? Is this one of the things that businesses look at all when they factor the decision to grow here, grow elsewhere, come here?
Oh, sure. It's very important for New Hampshire employers to operate in healthy communities. So it manifests in different ways for different employers, but at a base level, we need to know that our workforce is going to be cared for, is going to be able to show up when they're scheduled to show up, is going to be able to do the job that they need to do. And making sure that everyone has preventative care is an important part of that.
So I'm going to pivot away a little bit. I think we've got about 2 minutes left in this segment.
Okay.
People have talked about our budgeting process in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And forget parties, but I look at two ways that I've sort of seen it. A camp will say, you know what, we have a spending problem. We got to rein in our spending, right? And there's another camp that say we have a revenue problem.
Yeah.
We've got to build the revenue to match what we want to do. Where do you sit in sort of that spectrum?
It's a good question. I have to say I come at it a little bit differently. And this is probably because most of the time I've lived here in New Hampshire and most of my professional life have been working in business. And most businesses don't ask the question in the way that you just articulated. It's usually governments that do. In business, you say, what's our most important strategic priorities? What are our core competencies? And how do we build our budget in a way that takes advantage of that best? In New Hampshire, our most important priority is how we bring and keep people, young families, and new businesses to our state. And our core competencies are our high quality of life and our low taxes. And the well-educated workforce that we have. So it's not always easy to build a budget that supports all of those things, but if you started it from any other place, if you don't look at your strategic priorities first, that's how you get into trouble with saying, oh, let's focus on raising this tax, or let's cut without thinking about the consequences. What we really need to do is think about what's most important for our state.
Okay, so and I want to actually get to that, but I'm out of time in this segment.